Hello. I am waiting for our guest today to log in, and then we'll get started with our conversation. Oops. There you are. Hello.
Oh, hi, Beth.
Hi, Rebecca. Great to see your face.
Oh, it's so good
Even
to
though
see you
we're,
too.
yeah, thank you. Even though we're like 22 hours away from each
I
other.
know.
It's not wild. But this is the
And there's
cool part about
an eclipse going on outside my
Yeah,
window.
right. This is for those that are watching afterwards. Like today is April 8th of 2024. I'm just casually having a solar eclipse right now.
You know, as you
Yeah.
do.
So wild. It's gonna be there's like yeah, there's a powerful energy around that. And I think that this conversation is gonna have I really just trust open-handedly that what comes up from my conversation with Rebecca is gonna be powerful and beautiful for the women watching. So I want to start by I have notes. If you guys see my eyes wandering, I want to stay on track. So I have notes to share and make sure I stay on track, basically. But here's what I want to start by saying. Hello, and thank you so much for logging in and joining us for this conversation. This is the second episode of Unmasking Motherhood, where we have real conversations with mothers from all walks of life and stages and seasons of motherhood and parenting in an attempt to pull back the mask of what you think you know about someone and really get to see them. There's a difference between seeing and like really seeing. It's so easy to measure and compare ourselves with other moms, and by doing so, feel less than or make them less than. This tit for tat, ultimately creating disconnection over connection. And my hope is that through these podcast discussions and interviews, you'll leave feeling more compassion and connection to not just yourself, but to others, less isolated in your mothering journey, and inspired to be even more open and honest with the people in your life. So, the podcast interviews, this discussion is two parts. Part one, we're going to talk about what do you see on the outside with my guest today. She'll share more of her story. And then we'll go a little bit deeper about what's behind the mask, what's going on the inside, and her more of like real journey of parenting. So, allow me to introduce our guest, Rebecca. We met close to 10 years ago through
Mm-hmm.
which I just saw, from being in town. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe it's been like almost 10 years. Wild. We met in my hometown of St. Louis through Pure Bar, which is fun because I'm going to have a lot of women that I've met as I'm thinking about this through Pure Bar here. So I just think you meet a certain type of special woman there,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really grateful for Rebecca's friendship over the years, and I'm so excited to have you on today.
Oh, thank you. And yes, couldn't agree more. Pure Bar has brought me so many wonderful connections with fantastic women, a few guys, and I'm just so happy to
Yeah.
be able to be in this community with you.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. Likewise. So let's get started. Let's jump in. So give us a little bit about your story, like elevator pitch about you. Tell us about you
Okay.
and your life, and yeah.
So I grew up in Maryland, outside of DC, and
Mm.
my family, lovely little family, and and then we lost my dad when he was just 48. I was 13, so
Wow.
that really changed the whole dynamic, as all of you listening can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But we held it together, and
Mm.
off I went to college and met the most fantastic guy. 35 almost years later, still married, and
Dang. Wow.
what? Props
Oh
to
my gosh.
Andrew.
Now, what'd you say, Andrew? That's your
Props
hubby?
to Andrew. Yep.
Oh. And
Um,
where did you go to school? And what did you have a major that you ended up graduating with? What was that?
yeah, I went to I started at Franklin and Marshall College in
Okay.
Pennsylvania, and then finished at the American University in DC. And I
Wow.
majored in English literature and art history, which, if
Whoa.
yeah, it's not the greatest for getting a job, but it was fun and I learned a lot, and it actually prepared me for a lot more things than you would think.
Mm.
So anyway, that was wonderful. And then Andrew and I married. I was only 25 when I got married, which to
Okay.
me seems young. I can't
Mm.
imagine how I was that wise at 25, but we did. We got married, and then we just lived our best lives. We moved to New York City. We lived
Oh,
there,
okay.
and that's where Andrew is actually from. Not the city,
Okay.
but just the suburbs. And lived up there and had a grand time, and then decided maybe a couple dollars of savings might not be a bad idea. So he got a job in Richmond, Virginia, and there we went. And that's where we had our son. And I was actually 33 when he was born. So I was a
Okay.
little bit of an older
Yeah.
mom.
Uh-huh.
And we hadn't really settled on if we wanted kids or not, but something inside me just went, yeah, I think it would be a really good thing to do. And I think
Mm.
it would be, we were so happy, just the two of us in our two little
Mm-hmm.
person universe. And then I decided, no, I think this would be a really fun thing. And I think it would be a good thing to do. And so we did. And we had several friends who had had trouble conceiving or carrying a pregnancy.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, we better get on this because I'm 33. And gosh darn it, Beth, I barely had my shoes off. And there we were.
You got pregnant? No way. He was ready to come.
So there you
Your
go. It was
son.
meant to be. So we have one child. His name is
Uh-huh.
Max, and he's fantastic.
Max.
And we've moved around quite a bit with Andrew's work. We've been to Virginia, Chicago, back to Virginia, and now in St. Louis. And I think we're here
Wow.
to
Okay.
go on. But I think people that meet me
Okay.
would think I was very lucky,
Mm-hmm.
because I am. And yeah, and I'm
Lucky in what way? Sorry to cut you off. What do you?
lucky. No,
Yeah.
no, 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 you're fine. Lucky in that we have a comfortable life.
Mm-hmm.
Our
Mm-hmm.
child is doing fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a lovely young lady in his life that I think they're very serious and will probably get married. And
Hmm.
and I've got a great job and I have Pure Bar and
Yeah.
so I think people would look at
Yep.
me and think, "Wow, you got it." And
Yep.
and to be honest with you, I have often felt, yeah, I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop because
Hmm.
it's a good thing. So
Hmm.
so that's kind of me in a nutshell, a little bit. I mean,
Yes. Yes, I have a couple other questions then. Thank you for sharing.
yeah,
As you were speaking, a few other things
uh-huh,
popped up.
yeah,
If you're able to share, curious what your husband, because you said you've moved around, what he does
uh-huh.
for work, and also tell us how old your son is.
Oh,
I
oh,
have more
sure.
questions around your son. Let's start with your spouse, and then I have a question about right before you got pregnant. But
Okay.
yeah, his age would be cool, just to know
Okay.
what stage of motherhood you're in, how old your baby is.
Yes, for sure. Okay. So my husband was always in retail. He worked for Circuit City.
Mm.
That's what took us to Richmond,
Oh my
Virginia, which
gosh, Circuit City.
for some of you of a certain age, you'll remember that big red ball. And that's where you
Yep.
went to get your TVs because there wasn't a Best
Yep.
Buy back then or an Amazon. And so he worked for them and then he worked for Sears. That's what took us to Chicago. And
Okay.
then and now he works for in a weird switch of events, a wholesale flooring, cabinets, countertops, that kind of thing, like home
Oh, yeah,
improvement,
very different.
but
Yeah.
but wholesale to the trade. So, but
Okay.
he's been very successful there, and the company's doing really well. And you can see the men going in my background. As I mentioned, I'm
This is
getting
the window.
a couple new windows today because we live in an older home and it's just been
Uh-huh.
drafty as heck. And so when you see these men go by, they're my husband. So there you go.
You're like, wow, that's a busy house over there.
Yeah.
You have your windows replaced.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So that's Andrew, and he's just
Okay.
love of my life. And then
And
the
then
other
pardon
one,
me, what do you do for work? Speaking of work, what do you do for
oh,
work? I mentioned
oh,
skew.
okay,
So
sure.
speaking of that,
So
jump all
I have done a million things for work.
in.
I used to be an event planner. Our son was
Mm,
born. That's all nights and weekends. I couldn't. That
yeah,
just wasn't in our family dynamic at that point.
right.
Um, so then I taught preschool because that gave me
Oh,
the same hours as my son.
right.
Then I worked as a CASA, which I don't know if you know what that is. It's a court
Not familiar.
appointed special advocate. So I wrote
Mm,
reports and worked on behalf of family court judge and guardian ad litems for children who are
wow.
in the court system, family law system, through no fault of their own.
Mm,
So I did
wow.
that for 4 years, and that was
Okay.
really both rewarding and difficult. Um,
Yeah,
so
I can
there was
imagine.
that. I've gone totally off track now.
Mm,
Anyway, that's what's
okay, tell us. Yeah.
taking us around. And then I've come here and I decided the CASA thing. Um, I had kind of done my part and I wasn't sure my heart had it in it to keep going down that road
Yeah.
once we moved here. And we've been here in St. Louis for 12 years and I just got a fun retail job. So I
Ah,
work
yes.
at a little company, plug for the White Rabbit in Brentwood,
Oh,
Missouri.
yeah.
Plug. They're online. And what we do is it's basically it's a gift sort of mostly furniture store. And what we do is we get
Nice.
furniture from what we call pickers. Some people may be familiar with that term. They go to estate sales and auctions and buy furniture that, needs love, needs a little help,
Mm-hmm.
and we refurbish it and then we sell it. And we sell it for a really good price. So it's a
Yeah.
great place for young families, people expecting babies to come and buy
Mm-hmm.
furniture because it's really quality furniture that
Right.
we've just painted and redone the hardware on. And
Unique.
yeah,
Yeah, like one of
yes,
a kind version of a beautiful piece. Oh.
absolutely. So
Mm-hmm.
I work there 3 4 days a week. But yeah,
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, cool.
yes.
So thanks for that background on your husband's job, yours. Wasn't sure,
Hmm.
just letting our audience know, do you work, not work? Did you
Yeah,
work when your kid was little? Some of the moms are that are listening are going to be full-time stay at home. Then we'll have
yeah,
part-time and full-time working parents.
sure.
Of course, parenting of itself, we know is full-time.
Yeah.
But yes, and then let us know about your baby Max and how old he is. And
Okay.
then I have another question for you about him.
Okay. All right. So our son Max is 26. He was 26 in December. He is actually, I mean, mom brag. I hate to do this. He is actually a graduate student right now at Oxford University in England. And
Holy
he is,
moly.
yeah, I know. He's smarter than Andrew and I put together times 12. Um, but he's going for his master's in philosophy in modern Chinese studies. So he is fluent in Mandarin and spent his summer, one of his college summers, making beds in a youth hostel in Taiwan. And he is just, yeah, just anything to get to a place where he can just speak Chinese. And he's a great kid. He started at Oxford in October, and then it's a 2-year program. It's kind of a halfway between a master's degree and a doctorate. And
Mm-hmm.
so he will finish. It's a trimester system, so he'll finish at the end of June, and then he'll start again, doing a trimester session abroad back in Taiwan in October. So, mhm,
Wow, wild.
yeah, yeah, he's
That's your
he's
baby.
it's my baby, but
Yeah.
he's like, he just fascinates me now because I remember,
Oh,
all the ups and downs and that we had. And now it's like, wow, like, how did you
look at
get?
him.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so fun.
Like
It's
in
so fun. I
awe.
know moms, young moms, you may not see this yet. It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. Yes, there's going to be a lot of moms with like under 5-year-olds that are in it,
Oh, yeah.
really in the trenches of those stages. I know
Yep.
every stage, from what I've heard, has its own challenges and like beautiful
Yeah.
moments too, but the under 5 is
Yeah.
special in the like lack of sleep and the big tantrum emotions and all that stuff that
Yep.
comes with it, constant sickness.
Yeah.
um, so yeah. Okay. One other question for you. So you're in St. Louis and redoing your windows today.
Yes,
No,
apparently.
with when it came time to like you weren't sure if you were gonna have children, but then you felt like
Hmm.
this nudge. Where was Andrew on board with that? Like, was he, or was it a surprise that you got pregnant? What did he
Oh,
actually like come around to it, or what was that like?
he was like, as I mentioned, we had several friends who had a hard time getting pregnant.
Yeah.
And we had several friends who were in the midst of IVF, and I was like, I feel like if we're going to do this, I mean, why not just see what happens? And
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, all right, okay, we'll just see. And I am sure that the minute he saw those little lines on the test, he was over the moon. But at the time,
Oh,
it's scary.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you'd be kind of crazy if you didn't think it was a little bit scary. This
It is.
whole, because it never ends. I mean, my son is 26, folks. I worry
No.
a little bit every day.
Right.
Um, but but no, once we knew we were in it to win it, he was 100% on board.
Oh.
So yeah, but
Yeah.
and then I
Okay.
and then I had all kinds of problems. I will share this with the group. I had a
Yeah.
very wise friend who once said to me that every life is a miracle, and it isn't
Mm-hmm.
easy to manifest miracles. And so,
Hmm.
most people that I know have either had some difficulty becoming pregnant, some difficulty perhaps remaining pregnant, carrying a pregnancy, some difficulty giving birth,
Yeah.
some difficulty after birth, postpartum issues.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody gets a free lunch in this whole
Yeah.
ordeal. And that gave me a lot of comfort because I was, Max was trying to be born about 3 months early. And I had
Whoa.
yeah, I've forgotten the name for it, where your cervix it's like an incompetent cervix. And so he was slipping out very, very early. And so I had to, and it was too late to stitch it up. That's a fairly common and very easy procedure, but you have to know to do it early enough.
Mm,
And so I was on bed rest for a month. And
dang.
yeah,
Mhm.
so
Scary. First
yeah,
pregnancy, you're like, okay,
yeah,
stay
I
in as
know.
long as possible.
I know
Yeah.
exactly. So he was born 8 weeks early. All is
Okay.
well that ends well, but it was
Yeah.
it was a bit of a rough go in the beginning.
Hmm. Yeah. How was the rest of, aside from, I mean, that was a pretty big deal. Overall, how was pregnancy? And I'm curious about pregnancy, birth, and then whatever you want to share there. And
Sure.
also, did you have family support around you? We're
Okay.
gonna have women from all different stages of that.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I
Curious.
did not have family support. My family is all back in Maryland, D.C. area. Andrew's family is down in Florida or still up in New York.
Oh,
So I was by
okay.
myself, and
Mm-hmm.
Andrew was unbelievably supportive. He came home every day for lunch, or he arranged, with my
Hmm.
friends to have somebody visit me when I was on bed rest every day. Um, but anyway, up until I was, I went, I think it was my 28-week checkup, that they discovered he was actually starting to kind of crown a little bit. So, but up until then, it was easy
Confirm.
peasy. I didn't have any nausea. I had a weird aversion to chicken, but I can live with that.
Yeah, right. All things considered, that's not too
Yeah,
bad, you know?
I'll
Um,
do.
but then you're like, okay, curveballs thrown at me with that
Yeah, but then that
appointment. Yeah.
curveball, and I went in for my checkup, and they were like, "Okay, we're going to wheelchair you down to this high risk pregnancy specialist," and I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh gosh." So, but he hung in there until Max was born at 32 weeks, and he weighed 4 pounds.
Mm. Oh.
So, he
Mm.
looked like a little baby bird. Bless his heart, he was
Yeah.
not a cute baby infant or newborn. He was not a
A
cute
little
newborn.
shriveled
He
now.
got
Oh.
cuter as he got older.
Oh, I
Um,
believe it. Yeah.
but yeah, it was scary. But honestly, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, and I feel I can, um, I went home once I was healed enough to go home. I went home. He
Mhm.
stayed in the NICU. The hospital
Yeah,
was
NICU.
less than an hour away from less than an hour, excuse me, less than a mile away from our home. So
Incredible.
I could go home and completely get my rest, build up my strength.
Yeah.
I could be there and visit him whenever I wanted, as long as I wanted. And it was, it was honestly, I mean, there are pluses. You always want to go home with your
Yeah.
baby, but it gave me a chance to know he was in the best possible hands in a NICU. And I was able to regain my strength and get some sleep so that when he did come home,
Hmm.
I think I was in a much better place.
That
Um,
makes sense. And how long was he there?
he was in there for about 3 weeks.
Okay.
So not a long time. And they sent him home with
Hmm.
one of those little oxygen tanks with the little tiny nose thing
Nose
that goes
cannula.
under.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Just
Uh-huh.
just for when he ate, because I don't know if other moms know this, but especially white boys,
Oh, yeah.
their lungs take a long time, longer than girls or people of color. Their lungs take a little longer to develop. And so, when he would eat, he would forget to breathe.
Hmm.
So he had that under there just now. And then the pulse ox monitor,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
the little thing you put on their
Yep.
foot to
Mm-hmm.
measure the oxygen
Mm-hmm.
in their blood. And they said, okay, he just needs to wear this when he's eating. And that way, when to put the little cannula under his
Yeah.
nose. Beth, I put it on him every night just because I was terrified. What if he,
Yeah.
rolls over? He couldn't roll over. He was, 4.5 pounds
Oh,
by
right,
the time he came home.
right.
But I was just,
Yeah.
so I just did typical new mom stuff. I slept on the floor in his room
Oh,
and
yeah.
had that monitor on him. And of course, every time he kicked his foot, it would beep beep. Um, but I did what I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all do what we do,
Totally.
everybody's way is a little different, I guess.
It was the
So,
way that it felt right for you, and like
mhm,
I think every new mom has a level of, I don't know if anxiety is the proper word I'm trying to think of right now, but when you
mhm.
have a brand new baby, first time mom, they're sleeping at night, that, whether you're in the room with them or not, every mom like checks on their baby or is staring at the
Yes.
monitor or whatever. And like, then to have that adversity of having a preemie and,
Hmm.
you know, some
Yeah.
issues there that you had to monitor. I can imagine if the anxiety being heightened of like, I want to make sure he really is breathing. Like every mom worries that,
Right.
but then in your situation. So
Right.
yeah. So
So
that's
anyway, but he made it. He did
yeah,
great. And
that's
by the
amazing.
time he was about 2, he walked late. He he didn't talk late, but he definitely was physically a little behind some of his peers. But
Mm-hmm,
by the
mm-hmm.
time by the time he was like 4 or 5, he had all caught up. So it was
Yeah.
all fine.
That's great
Yeah.
to hear because there's going to be, I'm just glad you brought that up because there's so many moms that might have like one baby and they're in the first
Hmm.
couple years, like, is my kid behind? And like,
Yeah.
there's just also that level of anxiety and fear of like, is there something wrong with my kid or
Yeah.
comparison hopping up? And even within
Oh,
siblings, there's such differences with my two kids that you're like,
yeah.
you can't help but compare because you just see it and you're like, oh, I'm noticing this at 18 months. This one was doing this and this one isn't. But there is a level of like worry
Yeah.
or will my child be different? Is there something wrong? And
Right.
I feel like at the end of the day, most of the time, things just work itself out.
100%.
So I'm glad you just said that, just to put some
100%.
mom's peace of mind.
Yes. Oh, moms out there, please know it. It is such a weird. You think you're okay. All right. So, all right. So in my case, 2 was not terrible. 2 was fine.
Yeah.
3 3 was bad. 3
Mm.
was just I was like ready to take him in and get him tested for things like
Uh,
um but it and then I think you think about it, young people like of that age, they've got to explore. How else are they going to know? I mean, you can tell them, okay, this is why we do this, this is why we don't do that,
right.
but they have to they have to know it for themselves.
Mm.
And
So true.
that's where, I mean, we all do, not
Yeah.
them. We all have to kind of, I mean,
Yeah.
know it for yourself. And yes, you want to make sure no forks go into outlets,
Yeah.
but sometimes you have to let them tumble a little
Mm.
bit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's just been my experience.
Yes.
And I have a very cautious child. I did not have the kid who was riding his bike off the ramp over the mountainside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but but
Mm-hmm.
I think for if you can let them fall down a little bit and you can let them make the mistakes and then talk to them about it, or if they may not want to talk about it, they may have learned the lesson,
Right.
and
Yes.
they feel independent because they learned that lesson. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good thing, to let
Mm-hmm.
them kind of learn as they go,
Yeah.
within bounds, of course.
Hmm. It's like we
But
offer our guidance verbally as
yeah.
parents, we offer that in those boundaries. And at the same time, kids are naturally going to test them some more than others,
Yes.
temperaments. But it's
Yeah.
like part of the way we all learn through lived experience versus it's like it's different for someone to
Correct.
speak to you as a teacher standing from a board. And it's another
Right.
for you to like go out and live what you're learning. And
Right.
natural consequences is something that I would say practice in our family within reason of like,
Hmm.
well, we've asked you to put your coat on. It's really cold outside. I'll have it maybe with me, but like, okay, you don't want to have it on. Oh, you're
Yeah.
cold right away. See,
Yeah.
like, so anyways, but yeah,
Exactly.
that's a whole conversation,
Exactly.
around parenting and everyone's going to find their own way through it and what works for them and all of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, what were you going to say? Go on.
No, I was just going to say, sometimes when you mentioned that, it made me think sometimes it's really great to just think of your child a few years older
Mm.
and think, okay, I can tell my favorite little lamb chop in the whole wide world to put his coat on, or I can let him get cold and see if he wants the coat. And then just think, down the road, it's going to be better because he's going to remember as he's a little bit older that it
Yeah.
wasn't that he had to wear the coat. It's that he chose to wear the coat. And
Mm.
mom just happened to have my coat. Hey, how cool is that? She didn't make me
Yep.
wear it. I chose to wear it. And
Uh,
who doesn't want autonomy? You
yes.
know?
Yes, yes, yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
anyway,
So important for our
setting
little
them up to
people.
succeed, in other words, I guess, like you were saying.
Oh my gosh. I just feel like I could talk to you about that. I feel like that's a conversation I'll have within this community about consequences, autonomy, where do you pull back control, where do you let your
Yeah.
kid have a say, because so much of their day is dictated, by us already, like you got to get up for this in school or whatever
Yeah.
our lifestyle, and for them to have some sort of say, I've read and I do believe I believe that like they need some of that their own autonomy within to feel like they're not going crazy,
Yeah. Yeah.
being told you got to do this, all rules. So I'm like, this is a whole conversation, but I'm like, you're
Yeah.
bringing up good points and you're
It's
sparking my.
super important. I think that is really important. I just remember Max went to, when he finally got to high school, he had to switch. We moved to St. Louis the summer before he went to high school.
Oh, yeah.
And
What a time to
he,
move.
I remember him come, yes, it was a good time to move. And I remember him coming home and I was like, well, how was it? How were your teachers? Did you have one you liked? And he's like, well, I really like my English teacher, Mom. These teachers here treat me like a sentient being. I was like,
Oh, whoa.
really? I'm like, sentient, what definition? And he was like, yeah, Mom, they treat me like I know what I'm doing. They don't tell me what to do. They like show me
Oh.
what's going to have to get done. And then they let me. And I was like, oh, smart teachers. I think we can all,
Mm.
I mean, wouldn't we all like to be treated that way? I mean, so
It seems
anyway,
like basic human dignity and respect to
I
versus like I'm
know.
gonna tell you what to do. Like I'm gonna equip you and I believe in you to make those choices.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
oh,
So
that's a sentient. He's like a 15-year-old talking like that.
I
14.
know,
I
yeah.
don't know. Like,
He's an only child, so folks, he's an only child, so he was 4 going on 40.
yeah, yeah.
Yes,
It sounds
for
like
sure.
my son Adrian. He's like, dude,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's awesome. Okay, well, we've gotten to hear a little bit. Just I know that there's so many avenues and paths, even about your history.
Hmm.
Like we could talk about, and at the same time, part of
Hmm.
this podcast, this interview, is pulling back the mask and like, okay, we've heard some of Rebecca's story, and
Hmm.
I want to take it to part two and kind of pull back that veil, pull back that mask on more of your motherhood journey, and just open the discussion here by asking you this question and take
Uh-huh.
the time you need to answer it. If we really knew you, Rebecca, what would we know about your motherhood journey?
Ooh, okay. Um, if you really knew me, you would know that this journey has been a bumpy ride.
Mm,
And I think I'm not alone in that.
no.
I very much remember after Max was born and, caring for this little tiny peanut of a baby. He didn't sleep
Literally.
yeah, literally. Didn't sleep through the night until he was about, and when I say through the night, I mean like 6 hours,
Mm-hmm,
until he was
mm-hmm,
about 10 months old
mm-hmm.
because he was so tiny.
Yeah.
And I just, you're sleep deprived. Andrew had to go to
Yeah.
work. He couldn't be up. He would have if he could have. He took
Right.
the weekends. But you're up every 2 to 3 hours with this
Yeah.
little guy.
Yeah.
And I just remember talking to a very dear friend of mine, and I was so blessed to have a community of women in my neighborhood. We could all like walk to each other's homes.
Oh, incredible.
All, yes, it was, oh my gosh, I
Wow.
can't even tell you how blessed I was with this. And and talking to a friend, my friend Allison, who happened to be a child psychologist, and she had We all had kids within 2-3 years of each other.
Nice. Okay.
It
Yep.
was,
What a
oh my
dream.
gosh, it was a
I mean,
dream.
your
It
community
was
right
the,
there.
oh,
You didn't have
110%.
family, but you had the sisterhood of other
Exact,
mom. Oh,
that's exactly right. 100% right. And I just remember we were at Allison's house and it had, I guess Max was maybe 3 months old. And I just remember looking at her and bursting out into tears and
oh,
saying, I really am questioning the wisdom of this decision. And I think,
oh,
I don't know if I made a mistake. And
mm-hmm.
this is hard. And
Mm.
she's a child psychologist, so she did the smartest thing anyone could do. She didn't say a word. And
Oh,
she just kind of said, I know. And, gave me a big
yeah.
old to my shoulder. And I was like, all right. She's like, yeah, you're going to do it. Obviously,
Yeah.
you're going to do it, but it's really hard. It is. And I don't think enough people say that. I think everybody's like, oh,
No.
you're pregnant. Oh, it's such a blessing. And it is 100%. It is.
Mhm.
But it's not the easiest thing to go through. And then
Mm-hmm.
moving further down the line in my motherhood journey, and I happened to start when Max was, I don't know, about 3 or 4, I started keeping a journal because I wanted to remember the
Yeah.
good, the
Oh,
bad, the ugly. And
yeah.
let me tell you, I highly recommend this, even if you don't
Yeah.
do it every day, even if you only hit the highlights. Because I looked back through the journal before our conversation
Oh,
today. I was like, oh my God, I forgot
oh,
that. There
yeah.
were rough patches.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah, I mean, there
You
was,
wrote it all.
I
Yeah.
wrote it all down like, what is wrong with this child of mine? Has he no empathy? Has he no, compassion for other kids?
Is he going to be a sociopath
Is,
next?
well,
No.
obviously.
Right?
So, yeah, so he had, because I don't know, it was because of his prematurity or if it was just him. Either one is entirely likely. He just didn't get along with the other guys. He wasn't
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sporty, he wasn't athletic. He was, as I mentioned, he was a little bit more cautious. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was hard for him. His best friends as a child under the age of say 7 or 8, were always girls. And
Hmm.
he liked to play in the sandbox. He'd swing on the swings. Did he want to throw a ball at other kids? No, he didn't. He had no
Yeah.
interest in that. And he was awful at soccer. He finally found taekwondo, which was the best thing in the world.
Hmm.
But there were rough patches, and I will share with the group right now the worst thing, my worst day as a mom, I think.
Oh.
Um, he was 5 and he
Mm-hmm.
was still in preschool. He hadn't gone off to kindergarten yet. And there was this other kid, and his mom, his parents, and Andrew and I were friends. And his
Okay.
mom's a psychiatrist, and his dad's a doctor, a bone doctor. I don't know what you call him. And we were really good friends with them, and we still are. We still are. It's all fine. But for some reason or other, Max got it in his little pea pod of a brain that he didn't want the other kids to play with Jake because Jake wasn't nice to him. And so he got the other kids to not play with him. And I get a call from Jake's mom, and she's like, Rebecca, I hate to make this phone call, but if it were my child, I would want somebody to make this phone call. So I'm going to just share with you that Max is telling the other kids not to play with Jake. I was just devastated. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, Erica, you're a psychiatrist. Please tell me, how do you teach empathy? how do you
Mm.
teach this? Because this isn't right. And Andrew and I have never, I don't think, modeled this type of behavior. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, it's okay. You know, they all go through these phases. And, you know, I just wanted you to be aware of it. I'm not saying you have to,
Oh,
not telling you what to do, but it was, oh my gosh, can you imagine? Can you
were
imagine?
you
So
just like horrified that your
I
son would
was,
do?
that would, he would do that. And oh my gosh,
Yeah.
how would that even come into his brain? And
Mm.
how do I teach him that you want, I mean, the whole idea of you treat other people as you would want to be treated. How would you feel if you were on the receiving end of someone saying, don't play with Max, he's not fun,
Right.
or don't play with
Mm-hmm.
Max, he's creepy, whatever. I don't know what was said,
Yeah.
but
Right, right.
um
How did you work through that? Like, was he responsive? Did he understand? Like, did it
oh
happen again with this boy or?
no, it didn't happen again. And we kind of made it a point to Erica and Ken and Andrew and I
Yeah.
would get together and we'd be like, okay, we're going out with the XYZ family. And so Jake will be there and his little baby sister. So, you know, we're all going to go out and we're going to go walk around this park together. And
Yeah.
and just kind of made them be together, but not in an adversarial way. I don't know if that
Mm-hmm.
had anything to do with it or if it was just me being, dear God, Max. What were you thinking there? Just tell me what you were
Mm-hmm.
thinking. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it didn't ever happen again. He didn't really um he didn't really have guy friends until he was a little bit older, but
Mm-hmm.
that was totally fine with me because you know I
Yeah.
think it's wonderful for to have a best girlfriend or best guy friend. I think you can learn a lot that way. But yeah, it wasn't good,
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
But that was about the worst that happened in his young years in that point. And so I'm going to just share that because
Yeah.
I mean, you can imagine all you moms out
Right.
there, your kids are going to do something and a friend is going to tell you, hey, did you know?
To get that phone call.
You're going to get the phone
Mm-hmm.
call or the pull you aside in the bus line or the whatever. And it happens. And, you know, and guess what? That
Right.
mom's been pulled aside too.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
That
you
is
talk,
yeah, go on.
oh no, I was going to say, you talked about comparing in the beginning, which is an
Mm.
absolutely terrible idea, by the way. Um, but every time you compare yourself to another mom, just if you're going to do it, just know that that mom is comparing herself to possibly you, definitely someone else, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's part of the heart behind these conversations is like you think you know something about someone or that you might just judge them based on like hearing a little bit about their story, what you see on the outside, and
Mm-hmm.
measure yourself up against them in some way. And ultimately, like we're all doing it, and
Yeah.
it's preventing us from the connection we really desire. And we're not supposed to pit ourselves against each other, even though I think
No.
it's human nature to judge. It's part of our nature and our biology. I believe that there's a real reason that was helpful at one point. Like, is this person safe or unsafe? Back in
Yeah.
our primitive stages and ages, thousands and thousands, years ago.
Yeah.
But it's like at this point, we're really in a generation of being more connected
Yeah.
digitally than ever
Yeah.
before. Yet every single mom I talked to, at least Rebecca, I don't know how it
Hmm.
was. This is obviously social media years. Like
Yeah.
26 years ago when you had Max, like social media, cell phones weren't really a big thing.
Weren't a
And we're
thing.
all so disconnected. And I'm like, what is happening? It's almost like my mind can't wrap around as much as I do understand it. It's wild because I'm living, I get it because I understand it because I'm living it. But like we're more connected than ever, yet disconnected than ever. And
Correct.
so I think it's just so important to actually talk about real stuff
Well,
and be
and I
honest.
don't you think maybe that we're kind of crossing into another new era with this social media stuff? It's like, ooh,
Yeah.
social media, ooh, influencers and filters and all that good
Yeah.
stuff. And now I think scientists and
Oh,
sociologists are realizing, wait, maybe this isn't all that we think it is. and
right.
and definitely I think there have been enough studies, and I'm not an expert on this at all, but that show that it's really not good, especially
Yeah.
for people who are younger and maybe not as confident in their own self. um
Right.
I
It
mean,
takes years for that to happen. The brain's not developed until 25.
right, right.
And
So
the
yeah,
reasoning in the mind.
yeah,
There's, yeah, I think it
yeah,
does so much good and there's so much harm that
yeah.
I don't think was intentional when it was
No,
created, right? And now it's just that
yeah,
is like that's I feel like that could be another conversation in the community we have about
100.
which with
Oh,
all ages and stages of parenting, like wisdom from parents who have lived through with kids, like
hmm,
or just opening up those conversations to talk about um
yeah,
not policing, but like technology and what you do in your house and
yeah,
that's a whole thing. And even back to your story that you shared whenever Max was 5, that you felt like humiliated, like, oh my gosh,
hmm,
this is a friend of mine. What did my son do? Like, I'm finding even in my own motherhood journey that, I mean, I got a call from my son's school last week of something that happened, and it's a very small school. It's very family oriented. I talked to the director, and she texts me, but she thought it would be best for me to pick up my son from school because of an altercation that happened, and I was like, oh, I was horrified. Like that
yeah,
same kind of thing. And my
yeah,
jaw just dropped. My heart was racing. I was at work at the time and I'm like, I can't, I mean, it was just like, how do I stay calm, cool, and collected, even though I'm like,
right,
what is happening? Am I a bad mom? Like you
yeah,
have all these thoughts racing in your head. Like my kid, have I done something wrong? Is it my kid? How
yeah,
do I discipline through this?
right,
And trying to, once I finally grounded myself, I just want to share this if any mom's listening, like I had to really find the key separation between like how I'm reflecting my ego showing up in this of like
hmm,
how why I'm embarrassed or like in just seeing my son and trying to remove my own emotions and like ground like how do I really want to handle this as like a sovereign mother versus like
right,
reactionary, because my
right,
first instinct was
right,
like oh my god. And
yeah,
that's just a whole,
yeah.
yeah, I'm sure your mind had a lot of stuff going on at once too of like the reaction and then also like how do I really want to respond though to
And
you know
I like what you said there about, oh my gosh, is it a reflection on me? What's everyone going to think of me?
yeah.
It's not about us. And it's
Yep.
it's and that is a lesson that I'm learning to this day, you
Mm,
know. It's hard not,
yeah.
I think as women, it's very hard not to say, oh, how could I control this? How could I fix this?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just say, wait, it's not me, but let's see how we can repair whatever has happened in this situation. You can't always let go with a fix, let's fix it attitude, but it isn't. As moms, we're doing the best we can, and things, we're dealing with other people and we can't control everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't, kids are just learning, and they're getting there, and they're
Yeah.
going to go in their own at their own speed, and we can provide the guidance, and we're going to mess up,
Yeah.
and they're going to mess
Hmm.
up. And, we're just doing the best we can. So,
Absolutely. That's that's so good. You made a note. I'm taking a note of perspective because I want to ask you about that in 1 minute.
mhm.
I have two more questions for you.
Sure.
So along those lines of like, if we really knew you, what would we know about your parenting journey, your motherhood journey?
Hmm.
Is there anything that you feel like people misunderstand or get wrong about you as it pertains to just I would let if we can relate it to motherhood? Um, do you think people see you one way, but really they're getting it wrong in any avenue of parenting or motherhood? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, it does. Um, I think it, okay, this might, I don't, gosh. So I think that people see my son and they hear what he's
Mhm.
doing,
Yeah.
and they are like, wow, he got into a good college, he graduated top of his class, he's at Oxford, he worked for 3 years at various NGOs doing
Hmm.
work in Nepal, and it's cool stuff.
Wow. Right.
Made
Absolutely.
zero money, but that was cool with him. I mean, that's
Mm.
what he's into.
Yeah.
And now he's at Oxford, and he's got a lovely girlfriend who moved to London to be near him with her company.
Wow.
And I
Big
think
deal.
people see all that and they're like, well, you didn't have any problems. Everything was fine with you.
Yes. Must have been smooth
And
sailing to have a kid like that,
yeah,
Lucky you.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I'm not going to lie, he was a good, easy teenager. But getting
Hmm.
there
Easy.
was a little bit of a rocky road. I mean, granted, that poor kid had to move. I mean,
Oh,
okay,
wow.
so here's a funny story. So we're living in Chicago. His best friend, Grace, lives across the street. And they are sitting at the kitchen table, and I'm doing something in the kitchen. And Max was, I think he was 9 at the time. And he's sitting there and he says to Grace, Grace, you're not going to believe it. We have to move. We're moving back to Virginia. Okay. We're moving back to Virginia. And
Yeah.
she's like, Max, why? And he goes, it's my dad. He's so unstable. He can't hold a job. Well, Andrew got a promotion. So yeah. So anyway, yeah, he's a funny kid. But he got yanked all back and forth here, there, and
Mhm.
everywhere. And so by the time we moved to St. Louis and he started at the high school here, the public high school here, and he got into cross country running, from then on, it was like, oh, this is great. But boy, until he was about I know this is like every mom is like telling me that's the opposite. That's wrong. That's not
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like his 0 to 12 was not great. And
Hmm.
then once we got here and he found his tribe of
Hmm.
cross country runners, nerdy kids like him, it was
Mm.
great. But I think a
Wow.
lot of people just see him now and they'll ask, what's Max doing? Well, this is what he's up to, and they're like, oh God, you never had a problem at all. God, how lucky are you? I'm like, well, I am lucky. That is true. But
Hmm.
it was not, the first few years were not easy. And again,
Yeah.
he's an only. So,
Hmm.
he's used to running in circles with adults.
True. Right, right,
So,
right. He's an old soul, probably by a young age. He was an old soul.
yes.
Inherently, it sounds like nature and nurture of all of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just it's so inherent in us to just like jump to conclusions when we hear something about someone, but you really
Oh,
don't know the story. And it is really beautiful too that 0 to 12 felt rockier
yeah.
for him, like your experience and his experience of him or with him. But
Hmm.
then once he hit 13 and um, interesting left through move, but then finding his people, I think that just speaks to like when you find your thing, whether you're
Yes.
25 or 45, and then you find a group of kindred spirits, like
Hmm.
the things that can do to
Yes.
you feeling more whole, even at
Yes.
such a young age, and he's still getting his bearings on like preteen and teenage years. But that's
Yeah.
a really special thing. And I think a lot of moms, whatever stage of parenting they're in, just knowing that the beauty of your kid, just even having a couple kids that get them and see them, or
Yes.
finding that hobby, that outlet.
I think finding that hobby, that outlet is especially in those tween early teen years, giving them a passion, something they like to do that they have, whether it's robotics. I know a lot of kids are
Mm-hmm.
into robotics,
Mm-hmm.
or a sport like taekwondo or running or soccer or whatever it might be. Um, it just gives, I don't you feel like all of us, no matter your age, from toddler to 100-year-old, it's so important to have a purpose, and
Mm-hmm.
to feel that, um okay, somebody needs me to do this, somebody's counting on me for something.
Ah, yeah.
And as moms, of course, you know
Mm-hmm.
but it's good to have something else other than that, other than just those little people that are yanking on your pant leg, or saying, I'm hungry, can I have a snack, or whatever. I think it's important to have a purpose, something that, for all of us, no matter the age, something that calls to you and says, I have to, this is important, I need to be a part of this, this is someone's counting on me. And I think that
Outside of motherhood.
outside of motherhood,
Mm-hmm.
I do. And I don't mean to add to anyone's burden, and that may not be something that new moms, young moms, it may not
Yeah.
be in the cards for them. Totally may not. But I think when we think of our children, when we think of, ourselves at certain points, and I'm an older person now, I just turned 60. So
Hmm.
it's important as you grow and as your children grow and inevitably will grow away from you, um,
Mm-hmm.
that you have that, like, okay, now I don't have to get the snack every day at this time, I don't have to
Oh,
pack the lunch,
yeah.
but I need to have something that makes me feel like, okay, I am important and I am needed, and I think that's really, really
Yeah.
important when you get a little bit older. Just saying.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's so many seasons of parenting, right? And I think
Correct.
there's so
Yeah.
much wisdom. And even when I know the new mom stage can be very trying, and you give so
Hmm.
much of yourself around the clock to the babies that aren't sleeping.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and that's just a thing for that season. But I think a lot of moms lose their identity because you're like, you change so much. And so
Hmm.
having some sort of anchor point, whether it's a friend community or painting class or Pure
Yeah.
Bar, like
Yeah.
something to remember who you are outside of being a
Yes.
mother. Not to say it's
Correct.
not an important role. And then once your child's out of the house, I see so many, the empty nesting stage where you're like, who am I if you don't have that thing? And I think regardless, there's a grief in all of the stages that we don't talk
Yes.
about. Even with
Yeah.
my son turning 5, he's still in the house, but there's a grief of his babyhood over. Like he's getting,
Yeah.
towards elementary school years. And
Yeah.
at every season there's some grief and there's
Yeah.
joy and who they're becoming, and having those passions for yourself is like
Yeah.
your own anchor, your own
Yeah.
identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had not thought about that aspect of it, but it's absolutely true. I mean, yes. I mean,
Which part?
yes, the graduating from preschool, going to elementary school, that first day at the bus stop, that high school graduation, college
They're
graduation. I mean, and then the empty
they're all
nest.
rites of passage for our children and in
Yes.
turn us, because we're the
Yes.
ones doing
Yeah.
it with them,
Yes,
you know?
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Even like as silly as it sounds, like, you know, my daughter's a year and a half and she wakes up a couple times a night. It's getting better now that I'm not nursing as much throughout the night. But with
Hmm.
that being said, even though I was resentful of like getting up all the time to nurse, I got to that point because I was up every couple hours to nurse her.
Hmm.
Once it stopped and slowed down, I was grieving that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
even in the hard moments, you're like, yes, he's 10 months old and he's finally sleeping longer bursts. It's like, I missed her in the middle of the night. Like those were, if,
Yeah.
as hard as it was too. And I'm like, those are those
Right.
sweet moments that you won't get back. There's always a last time for something. There's a
Yes.
last time you help your child brush their teeth. I used to be like, brush your own teeth. And I'm like, he doesn't want me to help him.
Yeah.
There's always a last for something, especially when you have kids in the house. I think the perspective, it is all consuming all the time.
Yes.
But then when it's gone, there's some sadness in that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I totally know what you mean. And you have to
Mm-hmm.
balance that with that sadness comes new possibilities.
Mm,
So,
I
you
love that.
know, yeah, my son graduated from preschool and now he's in kindergarten full day. Well, that means I have a couple extra hours that I can have coffee with a friend or,
Yeah.
you know, read 10 pages of a book or do whatever.
Right.
An extra load of laundry, whatever makes your heart feel like, um,
Mhm.
so, it's, oh gosh, Beth, I mean, it is such a balancing act, isn't it? I mean, it's like it's a emotional balancing act, it's a physical balancing act. It's just
Literally.
it is. And we all do it. And no and like you said, a lot of people would rather not talk about the my kid trying to get the other kids not to play with his friend. Um, but
Mm,
we're all there. It happens.
yeah.
And it's probably not a great idea to share it with everyone, but I think in a community like this one, it's really nice to be able to just share all the stories, great and
Mm-hmm.
not so great, and important
Because in
too.
sharing, and important, as I said,
I was to say, and very important too, so you don't feel
our
alone.
stories, we connect through story.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I have gone through like years of not watching American Idol. I like
Oh.
just a random TV show. I really don't watch that much TV. Like we have like the apps now, not cable.
Uh-huh.
And so my parents told me, watch American Idol again. And then we got so into it. And I was laughing again because this is the second season in a row that I've started watching again. There's a point
Uh-huh.
to this.
Uh-huh.
But I'm like, my husband and I are like engrossed. I'm like, yes, we love, my husband's a musician. We love singing. Don't get me wrong. We love music and we
Mm-hmm.
like to see the talent and all that. But it's really, especially in the auditions we're catching up on, it's about the story.
Yeah.
That's what draws you in. Like you're
Yeah.
sucked in, you care about the person, you feel more connected. And it's so, again, back to the heart of this, it's so quick to be like, hi, Rebecca, like might have been a client sitting next to you at Pure Bar and been like, oh, she just seems happy go lucky. Like everything's perfect in
Mm-hmm.
her life. And maybe, not to say things are falling apart behind the scenes,
Right.
but in seeing a story, you really get the honor of seeing a person and to like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the coolest thing to me. It's such a
Yeah.
blessing. And
And
you
it's just
feel,
so interesting. People are so
oh,
interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm curious for you as we wrap up here,
mhm.
thinking back to your early mom years, even before you became a mom, like what do you have any wisdom or perspective that you have, well, that you have now that you're like, I wish I would have known this? Like what would you tell your younger self
Mhm.
now?
Okay, first I would say sunscreen. That was the first thing I would say to my younger self. Sunscreen every day. Um, but I think I would say it's going to be all right. I mean,
Mm,
don't worry so much. You can't help but worry. Be kind to yourself, but it's really it's going to be okay.
mm,
And don't
yeah.
try not to jump to the worst case scenario. You know, your son, your daughter,
Yes.
your grandchild sneezes, they probably don't have RSV or COVID or whatever. It's
Extremes.
it's
Yeah.
we jump there and we go
Mhm.
there, especially when we're stressed.
Yes. So much
It went
easier.
so much easier when things are going relatively okay and you can kind of just say, all right, I'm going to step back. But when you're stressed, when work is going nuts, or you've got a second sick child at home, or your husband's going through a rough patch for whatever reason, and you're
Yeah.
just generally edgy because you're a human being, um, I think I think it's really helpful to breathe, to really just breathe
Mm-hmm.
and um and remind yourself this is it's all going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier said than done, so much easier said than done. But I mean, let's face it, we are women, we are
Mm-hmm.
mothers or grandmothers, or thinking about making this jump into a
Mm-hmm.
very hard forever job.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't even be here if we weren't strong.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
I
that's
think
truth.
I think that we are stronger. To quote Pure Bar, I think we are stronger than we think.
Mm.
And for the most part, I think we're also capable of looking at a situation, and after we do take a couple deep breaths and we do try to step back and get a little bit of perspective, I think we're all capable of making good decisions. Maybe not perfect decisions. I don't think any of us are capable of doing that every time, but I, you know, we're capable. We're capable people.
Mm.
And I think we're going to be okay. I mean, I think in those moments when you feel like I don't know what to do. I don't even know
Yeah,
where to go. I don't know.
I
You
can't do this,
I
or
can't do
anything. This is too
this.
much. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. That if we just slow down and breathe and step back,
Mm-hmm.
eh, you can get and take those baby steps. I think baby steps are,
Yes.
are important too. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, that's just me,
Yeah,
but
that's so wise.
it's kind of helped me in not letting it overwhelm you, because it can get extremely overwhelming. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Right.
don't
And
you
when you
think?
have wisdom, you have wisdom from lived experience. Now you have a 26-year-old out of the
Yeah,
house. So many of the moms listening are going to have kids at home still,
yeah,
where like they might get it, but like they've not fully lived and seen their kid grow up into their 18s and 20s. Now they're like, oh,
yeah,
they are okay. They're just
yeah,
in it.
yeah. I
And so
know,
you've
and
been
I
in
was
it and
there
you're
too.
out.
I
Yes.
know.
So,
Try to envision, you young moms, try to envision this if you can. That day that you're sitting at a dinner table or in a restaurant or in a park or wherever you are, and your kiddo is telling you about something that happened to him or her, and you just look at them and you're like, my God, I really like you. I think you're interesting, and I like what you said. And I actually
Aw.
kind of like you as a person, because it will happen. And it it may take a long time, believe you me. But but try in your worst little troughs of motherhood, try to remember or think, okay, at some point in this journey, I'm going to look at this person as a person, not
Yeah.
necessarily as my person, my son, my daughter. And I'm going to think, wow, I like you.
Mm-hmm.
And it will, I think it will happen. I think it will happen for most of us. Um, and it's a really, really, really great day when that happens. Really great.
Mm.
So
Yeah, that's beautiful. I can't wait to just keep, it's a journey of a lifetime to be a parent, to see the
it
transformation
is.
in ourselves and the little
It
people
is.
we raise and through all the ages and stages. And I
Yeah.
thank you so much for that wisdom.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Is there anything else you want to add?
I really just also want to add, look at your partner every so often and ask him or her, you know, how are we doing? Are you, how are you feeling? And in, because it is a partnership for sure, 100%
Mm,
if it can be. And I realize for some people it can't be, but if you don't have a husband, a wife, a partner in the home,
mm-hmm.
maybe you're lucky enough to have family and
Yeah.
someone else who's involved closely with this child's life that
Uh-huh.
you can check in with, and see how they're feeling too, um, is helpful.
About raising the child? Like how
Yes,
do you think
about
things are going with our children?
how things are going with the child, about raising the child,
Mm-hmm.
um, about how they see this little person. Get,
Mm,
like I saw that,
a great idea.
this happened at school today. Do you think Max is this way? Do you think I think he's doing great here, but what about that? And get
Mm-hmm.
that other person's, you're not in it as mom alone. I mean,
Mm.
there's got to be somebody, I would think. If it isn't
Yeah.
a spouse, it's got to be, if you're lucky, a family member that's close or a friend that's also got a kiddo in their
Mm-hmm.
life. It's just really helpful to be able to, you know, get feedback because, again, going back to perspective, that might help with that a little bit.
Yes, that's what I was just thinking. It's a great,
Hmm.
like a great idea just to have those check-ins, not
Yeah,
just in the dramatic, hard moments, but
right.
even like those two, of course. Like, but I could see it being helpful on a regular practice, or like even turning towards your partner if you're co-parenting, however that looks like. Maybe it's with a mother, your mother, your grandparent, right, of the child, of like,
Hmm.
um, how are we doing? Like, is there any change?
Yeah,
Are there any changes we need to make as parents to be better parents? Like just that inner reflection for yourself and introspection on your child, and the perspective that can come. It can be hard to let other people's opinions in sometimes too. To be,
yeah.
of course, if you're a husband, married, like
Hmm.
that person's opinion matters. Can't always get. I think as parents, a lot of the people I talk to are like, I can't let everyone tell me, because they don't always want to hear outside perspectives because people are very vocal
Yes.
about things, but it doesn't, and I don't hear you saying that either. So just from a
No,
trusted, safe person who's in it with you that
the
you really
person that's,
value.
yes, that's in it with you,
Yeah.
just to keep a sense of perspective. Because they may
Yeah.
also say, oh gosh, no, hun, that's, I did that when I was that age, and It's going to be fine. And just to hear that from somebody who is as enmeshed with your little human as you are. So
Mm,
you want somebody who knows that little person really
yeah.
well. No, don't go asking, you know,
The masses.
the masses. No, social
Yeah.
media, don't do
Right. Not
that.
the place. Yeah. A safe
Um,
community of people that,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
I think that's really helpful. Thank you, Rebecca.
oh, Beth,
I
thank you
really
for
enjoyed talking to you.
asking.
I feel
I
like there's
did
so many other,
too. Oh my gosh.
questions I
Well,
could ask.
thank you so much for thinking of me.
My pleasure.
This was really fun.
Yes,
I
I
hope the
agree.
other
It was good to
moms
connect.
get something out of it. I don't know,
Yes.
but yeah, guys, you know what? It's not easy, but it's 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 a journey worth taking. So,
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate you
okay.
coming on.
All right,
And thank
Beth.
you all for listening and tuning in. I hope that you can take something from her story or lessons and perspectives that she shared and apply it to your own life, or maybe a mom that you love that you're like, oh, I see someone else in my life more clearly now and I can help them through something, you know? So thank you all for watching. Bye bye.